did this to him?" "You were never good enough for our son," his mother screamed. Her face was inches from mine, her voice so raw with fury it felt like the walls of the living room I helped decorate were shaking. I just stood there, frozen, surrounded by the family of the man I loved, the man who had just admitted to betraying me in the worst way possible. And in that moment, I wasn't just heartbroken. I was being blamed for it. The air was thick with their judgment, their cold eyes backing up every word his mother said. That was the moment something inside me snapped. The deep, aching sadness that had swallowed me whole for the past day started hardening into something else, a cold, quiet strength. They thought they could break me, that their united front would shatter what was left of my spirit. Instead, they gave me the greatest gift I could have ever asked for, the power to walk away and never look back. But to see how I got there, we have to go back to how it all began. Our story started in the most normal way, a classic meeting through mutual friends that somehow felt like a movie. His name was Mark, and from the second we started talking, there was this pull I just couldn't explain. He had this incredible knack for making you feel like you were the only person on the planet. The first few months were just a dizzying, intoxicating blur. Looking back, I can see it for what it was, a masterclass in love bombing. He showered me with affection, thoughtful gifts, and endless praise. He'd leave notes on my car, send flowers to my office for no reason, and talk about our future with so much certainty that it was impossible not to get swept up in it all. He was charming, he was grand, and he made me feel adored in a way I never had before. He folded me into his life so fast. I met his parents and his sister within the first month, and they were just as charming as he was. His mother, Sarah, hugged me tight and told me she'd always wanted a daughter. His dad, David, was quieter, but he had a warm smile and always made a point to ask about my day. They were this perfect family, and they welcomed me with open arms. We had weekly Sunday dinners, celebrated birthdays, and even took weekend trips together. I thought I hadn't just found a partner, but a whole second family. They seemed to love how much Mark loved me, always saying how happy he was, how I was the one. I was building my life around this man and his family, planting my roots in what I thought was solid ground. I fell for the whole package, completely blind to the fact that the entire foundation was a lie. The shift was so subtle at first, I almost didn't notice it. It started around the 6-month mark. The constant, adoring texts slowed down. The long, deep conversations we used to have late into the night were replaced by him just silently scrolling on his phone. That phone, which used to be tossed carelessly on the coffee table, was now always face down or in his pocket. He got really weird with Snapchat, always angling the screen away from me. When I'd gently ask who he was talking to, he'd brush it off with a vague, "Oh, just some guys from work," and quickly change the subject. Then the criticism started. They were small jabs at first, disguised as jokes. He'd make a comment about my outfit, suggesting I should wear something else. He'd question my career choices, hinting that I was a little too ambitious. I didn't have the language for it then, but this was devaluation. At the time, I just figured he was having a bad day. When I tried to talk to him about the distance I was feeling, he would masterfully turn it back on me. He had a way of twisting reality that left me questioning my own sanity. My concerns about his secrecy were suddenly my insecurity. My feelings of being neglected were proof that I was too needy. He'd say things like, "Why can't you just trust me? You're imagining things." Or the classic, "You're being way too emotional again." I'd end up being the one to apologize, feeling guilty for even bringing it up, as his need for attention from other people became more and more obvious. He'd flirt with waitresses right in front of me, then laugh it off as him just being friendly. He'd post solo pictures on social media and get obsessed with the likes and comments, especially from other women. It felt like my adoration wasn't enough anymore. He needed it from everywhere. I remember one night we were supposed to go to a friend's party. He canceled last minute, saying he was exhausted from work. I was bummed, but I understood. Later that night, I saw him in the background of someone's social media story at a totally different party, laughing with a group of people I didn't know. When I confronted him with the proof, he didn't even blink. He told me his friends had dragged him out for just one drink and that he didn't tell me because he didn't want me to worry. He said it so sincerely that, despite the knot in my stomach, I chose to believe him. I didn't want to be the crazy, jealous girlfriend he was painting me as. So I ignored the blaring alarms and kept investing in a man who was already gone. The truth came out on a totally normal Tuesday, which made it all the more jarring. Mark had come home late again the night before, smelling of perfume that wasn't mine. He gave me the usual excuse, late night with clients, and passed out. The next morning, he rushed out for work, leaving his iPad on the kitchen counter. I didn't think twice about it until a notification lit up the screen. It was a Snapchat from a name I didn't recognize, followed by a string of heart emojis. My heart started hammering against my ribs. My hands were shaking, but I was guided by this cold, awful feeling of certainty. I knew his password. He'd given it to me months ago in some big performance of transparency. I opened the app, and my entire world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just one woman, it was a list of them. Dozens. The conversations were a sick gallery of his deceit. There were saved photos, explicit messages, plans for meetups. He was living a completely separate life as a single, charming, available man. He was using the exact same lines on them that he had used on me. The same compliments, same promises, same jokes. It was a script. I wasn't special, I was just his longest running show. I felt like all the air was being sucked out of the room. A wave of nausea hit me as I scrolled, each message a new stab of betrayal. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a calculated, ongoing pattern of serial cheating. He had women on rotation, a steady supply of admiration to feed his fragile ego. I saw messages planning a boys' trip that I knew he was on just a month earlier. But the messages were to a woman, coordinating their secret weekend away. I saw him complaining about me to these other women, painting me as controlling and difficult to justify his behavior. The man I loved didn't exist. He was a character, a charming mask he wore to get what he wanted. I sat on our kitchen floor for what felt like hours, the iPad in my lap, the glowing screen a monument to my own stupidity. The trust didn't just break, it was obliterated. When Mark walked through the door that evening, I was sitting on the sofa in the dark. The iPad was on the coffee table in front of me, screen on. He flicked on the light, a cheerful, "Hey babe, I am home," dying on his lips when he saw my face. He saw the iPad, and for a split second I saw it pure, unfiltered panic. Then, just as quickly, the mask was back. "What's that?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. I didn't say anything. I just pointed at the screen. He walked over, looked down, and the show began. First came the denial. Babe, that's not what it looks like. My friends use my iPad sometimes. You know how they are. The lie was so flimsy it was insulting. When he saw I wasn't buying it, he shifted to phase two. Blame. Have you been going through my things? After everything we've talked about with trust, I cannot believe you would do this. He was actually trying to make me the bad guy for discovering his betrayal, raising his voice to try and put me on the defensive. But I'd had hours to stare at the proof. I was done being manipulated. I calmly listed names and dates, quoting his own messages back to him. With every piece of evidence, his anger deflated and was replaced by a new tactic: pity. The tears started. He dropped to his knees in front of me, buried his head in my lap, and his body shook with sobs. He told me how sorry he was, that he was broken and messed up and didn't know why he did it. He said he loved me, only me, and that none of those other women meant anything. He begged me not to leave him, promising he would change, that he'd do anything therapy, whatever I wanted. It was an Oscar-worthy performance. He sounded so broken, so sorry, that a tiny, treacherous part of my heart almost caved. This was the man I loved, the man ID planned a future with. For a second, I doubted myself. Could we fix this? Was the man I loved still in there somewhere? But as his sobs continued, I realized he wasn't crying because he hurt me. He was crying because he got caught. He was terrified of losing his main source of stability, his primary supply of admiration. This wasn't remorse. It was a desperate, last-ditch effort to keep control. He wasn't fighting for us. He was fighting for himself. When he saw that his tears weren't working, Mark made his final desperate play. He pulled out his phone and said, "I'm calling my mom. She'll know what to do. She'll help me fix this." I was just stunned. A grown man, caught in a web of his own creation, and his first move is to call his mommy. I was still in shock, so I just sat there numb as he called her on speakerphone. His voice choked with fake sobs as he fed her a twisted story where I had found something and was overreacting. An hour later, his parents were at our door. I naively thought they were coming to be mediators. I thought they'd be disappointed in their son and offer me some comfort. I could not have been more wrong. We all sat in the living room, the tension so thick you could taste it. Mark sat between his parents on the sofa across from me, looking like a little kid who'd been sent to the principal's office. His mother, Sarah, started. She looked right past her son and stared directly at me, her eyes cold as ice. "I am so disappointed," she began, and for a split second I thought she meant in him. "I am so disappointed that you drove him to this." I physically flinched, like I'd been slapped. "What?" I whispered. "Mark has always been sensitive," she went on, her voice getting louder. "He needs a lot of support. You knew that, but you moved in so fast. You pushed him. You put all this pressure on him talking about the future." His father, David, just nodded along, his face a stern, judgmental mask. They were tag-teaming me, building a case where I was the villain. Then came the line from the hook, the one I will never, ever forget. Sarah leaned forward, her face twisted with rage. "You did this to him. You were never good enough for our son. It was a full-blown assault. They blamed my career, saying I worked too much and made him feel small. They blamed my independence, saying I didn't need him enough. They twisted every single quality he once pretended to love about me into a weapon. It was gaslighting on a family wide scale. They weren't just defending him, they were his partners in crime. The system that allowed his narcissism to run wild without any consequences. I looked over at Mark, expecting him to say something, anything to defend me. He just sat there, silent, letting his parents tear me to shreds. He wouldn't even look at me. And in that moment, everything became perfectly clear. The problem wasn't just Mark and his cheating. It was this entire toxic family, built on a foundation of excuses and blame. My heartbreak was suddenly eclipsed by a profound, chilling clarity. They would never hold him accountable. They would always make it someone else's fault. That was the final straw. Staying would mean a lifetime of being the scapegoat for their son's failures. The love I felt for him died right there on that sofa, replaced by an urgent, overwhelming need to get out. As his mother-S words hung in the air, a strange calm washed over me. All the noise, the crying, the yelling, the accusations, it all just faded into a dull buzz. I looked at the three of them, this united front of delusion, and I didn't feel angry or sad anymore. I felt nothing. The emotional hold they had on me was just gone. I stood up slowly. All three of them stopped talking and just stared at me, probably expecting me to scream and cry and defend myself. But I didn't give them the satisfaction. "You're right," I said, my voice perfectly even. The confusion on their faces was almost funny. "I'm not good enough for your son," I continued, looking right at Sarah. "And I'm not good enough for this family. I deserve better." Then I turned to Mark. I really looked at him for the first time all night. I didn't see the man I loved. I saw a weak, hollow boy being propped up by his parents. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. There was no anger in my voice, just finality. And with that, I walked into our bedroom and closed the door. I could hear their muffled, frantic whispers. I ignored them. I pulled out a suitcase and started packing, my movements calm and steady. I packed only my things, only what was essential. With every book and every piece of clothing I put in that bag, I felt like I was washing a layer of filth off of me. I wasn't just packing a bag. I was cutting myself out of a poisonous web. There were no tears. My decision was so absolute, so clean. There was no room for grief yet. This was about survival. When I was done, I walked back out. They were all still there, looking lost and confused. My quiet resolve had completely disarmed them. I didn't say another word. I walked to the front door, my suitcase rolling silently behind me. I opened it, stepped out into the cool night air, and closed it gently behind me. I didn't slam it. I didn't look back. Walking away wasn't an act of defeat. It was the single most powerful thing I have ever done. It was the moment I chose myself. It was my victory. The first few weeks were a blur. I stayed with a friend who didn't ask questions and just gave me a safe space, endless cups of tea, and a shoulder to cry on. And boy, did I cry. Once the adrenaline wore off, the grief hit me like a tidal wave. I grieved the man I thought he was and the future I had planned. But with every tear, I felt a little lighter. The most important thing I did was go full no contact. I blocked Mark. I blocked his mother, his father, and his sister on everything: phones, social media, you name it. I blocked anyone who was more loyal to them than to reality. I needed to create a clean space for myself, free from his attempts to manipulate me with fake apologies or more blame. He left a few desperate voicemails at first, cycling through the same script of begging and promising to change. I deleted them without listening. His words had no power over me anymore. Slowly, I started to reclaim the parts of myself I'd lost in that relationship. I threw myself back into my career, the one they'd criticized, and found a new passion for it. I reconnected with old friends I'd drifted from because Mark had subtly isolated me. I rediscovered hobbies he'd called silly. I started hiking again, painting, and spending my weekends doing whatever I wanted without having to check in with or justify my time to anyone. Healing isn't a straight line. There were days when a memory would pop up and the ache of betrayal would feel brand new. But those days got fewer and farther between. The real turning point came when I stopped seeing his betrayal as a reflection of my worth and started seeing it as a reflection of his character. His cheating and his family's behavior had nothing to do with me. It was about his bottomless pit of insecurity and their twisted family dynamic. Realizing that was freeing. I wasn't a victim. I was a survivor of narcissistic abuse. And every single day I spent building my new peaceful life was proof of my own strength. About a year after I left, I ran into an old mutual acquaintance at a coffee shop. After some small talk, she hesitated before bringing up Mark. And the poetic justice I got wasn't some loud, dramatic revenge fantasy. It was quiet and so much more satisfying. She told me that Mark had a new girlfriend within a month of me leaving, but the relationship didn't last. Apparently, the exact same pattern started to emerge: the secrecy, the lies, the constant need for attention. He got caught cheating on her, too. And when she confronted him, he once again called in his parents, who tried to run the same playbook on her, blaming her for his actions. But this woman, unlike me at the beginning, saw it for what it was immediately and walked out on the spot. The acquaintance said that in our old social circle, Mark is now just known as a serial cheater with a bizarrely over-involved family. He just hops from one short-term relationship to the next, leaving a trail of hurt people. He can't hold on to anyone for long because he's never been forced to actually look at himself. His enablers are always right there to clean up the mess and tell him he is the real victim. Hearing this, I didn't feel any ounce of revenge. I just felt this quiet, profound peace. The best revenge wasn't fighting with his family or exposing him. The best revenge was my silence. It was walking away and building a life so full of joy that he and his toxicity became a distant, irrelevant memory. He's stuck in his sad repeating cycle, forever chasing a temporary fix for his emptiness. While I'm free. He lost the one thing a narcissist can never replace: genuine love, freely given. My silence was the consequence, and my happiness is the justice I gave myself. That whole experience taught me so much about my own strength and about listening to that voice in your gut. If any of this sounds familiar, or if you've ever been blamed for someone else's toxic behavior, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Let's build a community of support for each other. And if you want to hear more stories about reclaiming your power, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. In the end, Mark S. family was right about one thing. I wasn't good enough for their son. I was too strong, too self-respecting, and way too unwilling to play a part in their shared delusion. They meant it as the ultimate insult, but I now wear it as a badge of honor. They thought blaming me would be the final blow, but it turned out to be the key that unlocked my cage. Walking away from people who refuse to see your worth isn't failure. It's the ultimate act of self-preservation. You can't heal in the same environment that made you sick. So if you find yourself surrounded by people who are determined to misunderstand you, please find the strength to walk away. Don't look back. Your peace is waiting for you.